Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad. In the name of Allah, the All Merciful, the Most Merciful. So we are going to start the first perspective of the seventh part, that is the apparent. Just before that, I will give you an example of what I call convenient abstraction, just to help understand the approach I have with the entire topic. After that, we enter the apparent with a brief presentation of the life model, and we enter one of the first elements of life, which are the pleasures and pain, and among them the sensation. But first, let me give you an example of what we're doing here in this entire channel. Let's imagine a group of cars, today's cars, get transported back in time in 1850. The cars have a full tank and their keys are inside, and the first person to meet to see these cars in 1850 is you, and you want to know what is a car. So you have you can observe you can interact, you can even start the car, drive it, you can disassemble it, and you want to know what is a car, what's the use of this tool. So the very first understanding you can have is the elementary view, and basically to ask you a question: what are the elements, what are the components of that system? And as you go through a car, as you disassemble it, you will see that there is always this big the biggest part, chunky part all around, that span across all the entire volume of the car, which is the frame. You call it the frame, you give it a name, and you can also start to identify some of its properties. Typically it will always be metallic part. So here you just made up a new word just to refer to that part across all the cars. Since all the cars have it, you can call all these parts frame, and you can continue using that word onward. The same. You continue your observations. You can identify the hood, the windows, the wheel. You see that there are four wheels. You will, since you can't distinguish between each wheel, which one is on top, in front on the right, which one is in front on the left, and so on, you're not going to give them four different names. So you give them one name, and you just keep a track of the count of wheels per car. And here, by simplicity, you reduce the number of words you have to come up with, you have to name in order to understand what that car is. And we can keep on going. This axle connected to the wheels, the gearbox, the differential, the engine, the seat, the floor mat. Some cars you won't see a floor mat, so some elements are optional. So maybe these parts are not does not define what a car is. The belt, the airbag, that's basically the elementary view. You make new names and you keep these names across the entire exercise. The second, you want to understand a bit more the car, so that's where you will start looking at the relationships. So the observations are, for example, the wheels are always in contact with the axle, the steering wheel always above a seat. The gear or belt, there is a gear or belt drive between some parts, typically the engine, the gearbox, and so on. All these indicate that there are elements that are interacting with each other. You see this across all the cars, so there are elements that interact with each other. You can define what we call, this new word called interface, is basically how are two parts connected: wheel, driving seat, engine, gear. Typically you can call them by pair, and with this you have an idea of all the some of the relationships that occur in all the cars. Other observations, typically you can see that the steering wheel is always in front, where the front is defined as the direction of the seat. The wheels are always the only part in contact with the ground, so you have rubber contact with the ground, suspicious. The light in front and the back, basically there is a spatial distribution that you can straight away define and record across all cars. And with this understanding of relationships, you can address you can start a further understanding, which is the functional view. Here you will look at the utility, the functions, or the utility of the car, of the elements of the car. And if you look closely, the wheel, the axle, after driving the car, for example, the wheel, the axle, the differential, the gearbox, and the engine are all generating and transmitting the rotation of the rotation of their parts, of some of their parts, and that typically you can define a new function to account for this. We can call this typically movement. This car allows movement. Other parts does not seem to be connected to this. They are standalone. And for example, the seat and floor mat makes the car clean and comfortable. That's the observation you can make and call that comfort. Airbag, seat belt for safety, and basically after having all these observations done, once you have covered all the parts, you can start guessing what is the function of the overall car. Typically, the car allows a person to move from one location to another, so change of location. And it's not always there's not always one answer. When you look at, for example, the car, you will see that there are painting, drawings, different brands, different signs, symbols, and all these are basically elements of identity of the owner. So here it may be just something, a tool used to identify yourself among society. So all these are functions, utilities made by human, and they are very meaningful. As you can see, you can't. If you remove one of them, it's a different experience for humans. So it's very important understanding here. And once you have the functional view, you can go even deeper and have the ultimate form of understanding is basically the end-to-end view. Here the question would be like, how do you reproduce the car? How do you do the whole thing end-to-end, as if you didn't need the person that built them to do it again. And here the observation are even more abstract, even more high level, by looking at the variety of functions that we saw before, the variety of functions and the associated solutions. If you want to build a car, you're going to need to define all these. You're going to need to define all these functions. You're going to need to track all the geometry of the each parts. Here, typically 2D, 3D plans maybe will be necessary to kind of have to know how the part is going to be, and then you can also understand if you take a car, load it too much, it will break. So here there might be other steps to implement, typically structural simulations, check how much weight you can put on that car, and so on, how fast it can go, and so on. And since it involves buying and selling elements, you're gonna need to have a financial plan for this, and your country might implement some laws that may be affected by all that you are doing in order to reproduce that car, so some legal terms. All these steps can be defined. We can define them as a part of a larger phase, which is the design. And then if you look closely at those parts, you will see that in order to get them from you are in 1850, you have a basic understanding of nature, all the resources that are available out there, rubber, metal, glass, you see that by looking at the parts, you see that some very unique transformation have been done to each of these parts in order for them to be like this. So in order to reproduce this, you're gonna need to kind of organize, have some people focused on the techniques to reproduce the car, parts. Here we can call them engineer. You will have the people that will actually repeat the action in order to get all the cars, the factory workers. Here definitely you're gonna need to track each and every single part in a very detailed manner, where which part, for each part you want to know from which material you get it, all the transformation step to get it. So just to be able to do this, you're gonna need good tracking logic, tracking processes. At some point, you're gonna need to assemble everything, to screw all the screws, to glue, to stick, to join all these car parts. So at some point, you have to organize this assembly as well, which order, in which place, and so on. And same again, it involves a lot of operation, a lot of people that needs to be paid, so financial plan, legal terms as well. And all these steps of production methods can be called production. Once you have design production, there's still one thing left. You won't be able to produce everything. For example, some materials, by looking at typically rubber, for example, in 1850, it's only natural rubber that you have available. That rubber grows in very specific part of the world, so you're gonna need to organize. If you want to reproduce it, you're gonna need to organize, make contact out there to buy, manufacture, to collect and process that rubber in order to be usable for your typically wheels. And for this, we're gonna need to track to set up some to track each and every contract, each and every product specifications with these people that can be called suppliers, and of course manage the orders when you want some parts to be there ready to be assembled in your production. And since it involves money to pay people to work, it also includes some financial plans, some legal terms. All these elements can be joined into a phase called supply chain. And once you have design, production, supply chain available, and all the financial plan, legal terms, if you have enough money, if you have the authorization to do what you can do, then you can reproduce the car. Something that was completely new to you a few slides before is now something that you totally understand end to end. And it is important here for the end-to-end understanding to be comprehensive. You don't want to miss anything. If you miss a single part, it's not gonna work. Recently, the ship shortage have just a simple ship has closed entire factories for weeks. So really important to not forget anything. And the way you build these elements, the way you track everything must be reusable. It has to be kind of simple enough for people to do it. So all the terms here that are in bold here, we just made them up in order to understand the cars that we observed. And with only this observation and the definition of a few concepts, we can understand a car to the point where the steps to its reproduction are clear. Of course, for those of you that knows in detail, there are things that there are limitations here. Two limitations typically. We are limited to the observations we can have. For example, the cars have ships, and each ships there is transistors organized at a very small scales, in order of the nanometers, and these are organized in multiple layers with masks. It's hard to figure out exactly what's happening. So if you can't figure out what are the calculations before, you can't reproduce. You can't do the whole understanding. So you will be limited in some parts. In reality, you will be limited in some parts of this process, but you get the point. With a few words, an observation, you can understand complex stuff. And in this channel, that's what we are going to try. But this time, not a car. We're going to do it with human life, with nature and religions. And to achieve this, we're going to have these concepts, these abstractions that we will define. And these are definitely not randomly chosen. They are very. It's a very big choice for me to go and identify the right word to use to deal with everything. And there are in particular 4 criteria that are very important that I showed before. You want meaning, you want things that carry value. You don't want to waste time on something that makes no difference to the people, for example. So it must be the most relevant. It must be comprehensive. If you want to understand, if you miss a single element of life at some point, it can hurt you. It can question your entire reasoning, and it must be absolutely. We must cover everything. It's essential. It is essential. Then reusable. Whatever model I come up with, whatever understanding I come up with, I want it to be useful for us in everyday life. So. I don't want. Typically, I'm not using big jargon, but I'm really careful at choosing the right level of meaning in order to get to understand things easily, to apply it in your life. And of course, the last one is to keep things as simple as possible. With one word, if you gather many situations, you can make things easy to understand. Much less information to remind. Much like it's easier to maintain the entire base of knowledge. And in this channel, an end-to-end understanding, the deepest understanding that we covered. That we showed, like how to produce a car. The end-to-end understanding is called a model. That's the word I use, a model. And in this very video, we'll start the human life model, and then we will we'll cover the nature model in hidden part 1, and the Islamic model, the religion itself, on the section on Allah. In the section on Allah, other religion models will be briefly mentioned in message part 2. So yes, these terms are really, really important. The terms I will define are really, really important, and they are carefully chosen. So it's typically parts that you need to remember in order to be able to reuse them. With that said, we can start the first pass of the 7th third, and the first perspective, the apparent. So basically anything that you can observe yourself. And the human life model. So after doing my observations, cross-checking all the information, all the sources, all the experience of life I had, I come up with this model. So here basically to give the big picture, the life is from birth to death, a succession of situations where a person will make decisions, and decisions will be based on the pleasures and pain, the capacities. We'll go over the very detail of each of the sections, so don't worry. The capacities you have, how you can act, your beliefs, and the signs you get to choose what you want to do. There is this base behavior of your body suggesting you things, and all these signs, the body is doing things in a specific way, and it's also suggesting things, and all these are to be considered in the decisions. And then there is the bigger picture in life, where you take a step back. Usually here, satisfaction, the question of the purpose of life here is typically when something wrong happens, and you, like something very sad event, something that hurts you, you question your life. That's where you usually question your life. What should I do? What is the purpose of my life? And this is like a long-term vision, but not all decisions are based on the long-term vision. Sometimes, for example, if you see a car coming to you, if you want to cross the street and you see a car coming, you're not gonna cross. You're not gonna question why should I Why should I be the one waiting? You just wait, because if the car, if you cross, you die. So decision. Once you made the decision, basically decision is setting an intent, is deciding what I want to do, what goal I want to achieve. I separate here the decision and the action by a step of problem solving. You can reach a goal in different manners, and the process of setting that action, defining that action, is called problem solving. And then you execute the action itself, and you observe the action related events. So when you do things, you feel the effort. The effort I put here, not in action execution. I know it's not timely, it's not the way the time it's not organized in time, it's organized rather in meaning, as we'll see later, as effort is very, very extremely important in the entire life. Consequences, perception, risks, opportunities, and of course when you go through life, you don't cover this in this order. You always go do a bit of this, do a bit of that, something happen, you miss the bus, you're gonna redefine how you're gonna go get to work and so on. So there is things happening, so you always change things as you go. But in order to go through your life, you cover each and every single one of these concepts. And I organize them in a way, they are organized this way because they are like separate, very separate things. You cannot interact with each of them the way you want, or the same way. They are very different. They are very different, yet combined all together, they cover everything about life. Everything you do in your life will be covered here. Everything, comprehensiveness, meaning, we have them here, and I believe it will be as simple as possible as we go through it. And in terms of application, as you will see in Hikmah, it's easier to organize the limits, typically the moral limits, to organize by each of these categories, and thus it will make things easier. So you go from situation to situation, from birth to death, and that's the human life model. I put it here in a single sentence. A person's life is a succession of situations from birth to death, where the person makes actions and lives through the action-related events. The action is the result of a problem-solving step to reach a preset decision. The decision is made by considering the pleasures and pain at stakes, the capacities to act, the beliefs, and a new ayah. Ayah is science. You might just remind this word. Ayah, sign, is a really, really important word. We'll go over the subtleties in this section. The base behaviors and life satisfaction approach. With that said, we're going to start with the pleasure and pain. First of all, I use the words I use my own definitions, even if you sometimes when it's close to a word, use my own definition as I take as I define things in a very specific way, and just to make it easy, I use the closest word available out there, but the definition is very important. The pain here, for example, is a negative response of an agent to an event. The agent would not want to go through it again if he could get it without anything in exchange, including time. So here we are referring to the feeling itself, not the action, not the belief that leads to it. It's really just the feeling. For example, a bad smell. When you smell something bad, you feel bad. A pleasure is the positive response in the same condition. For example, good food, and defined like this, there's two properties that are intrinsic to these, pleasure and pain. The understanding is conditioned to living through it, or at least for some of them, witnessing it. So here, when we will cover the pain and pleasures, I invite you to cover your own experiences. And the typical example is explaining sexuality to a kid. It's as he doesn't feel anything. It's hard for him to project into the mind of an adult. And then the second property is the no quantitative measure, and it's a recurrent problem. It's going to be a big problem for the entire channel. How do you quantify pain and pleasure? because basically the judgment highly depends on this. How much damage you do to people will directly influence the sentence you deserve, and inversely, how much help you get, you bring people will influence the reward you get. There are some body signs in the neural activity of the brain, like brain that fires differently according to the pleasure and pain, but it's not sufficient to measure, and the neural activity does not give you a number. Does not give you a number to be used in a legal term. I ignore here the subjective questionnaires where you ask somebody how does it feel. This is really not reliable measure, and the true nature and pain is known. And for the entire religion, I'm going to do this general, for the entire channel, sorry, I'm going to do this general assumption that the religion is interpretable without the quantification of pain and pleasure. If some research happen to find a way to measure those, it will greatly change the approach. It will greatly change how you judge between people if you're capable of doing this. So it's going to be a big update, but for now it's a general assumption that we don't know this, but we can do without. So now we're going to cover all the pleasure and pain that I consider happening in the life of a person. They are, remember, I use my own definition. Some of the words are close to that which you know, but in the definition there might be some discrepancy. So I cut them into 5 categories: sensation, emotion, ego, community, and intermediary. So sensation is anything related to the body senses. The emotion is related to, I put it here, soul, but it's basically that inner thing inside you that feels, that you can't exactly locate. You don't know, like you can think, you can, some people call it consciousness, but you know what I'm referring to, this thing you can't observe, but yet it's here, and you can definitely feel it. Ego is a rather relationship to yourself, is the belief you have upon yourself, and we'll see that in detail. The community is relationship to the other living nature. There are specific feelings that emerge from it, and finally, intermediary is anything else, basically any material intermediary to enjoy things. For example, if you lose time, you have a potential to enjoy the other things. If you lose energy, you have a potential, it will potentially affect the other pleasure. Same for wealth, and the last one is the God or spirit agent. So it is through God that you will go seek your happiness. So we're going to go over each and every single one of them, define, give examples, and in this video we start with the sensation. So it's I guess the simplest ones. I cover them roughly in order of distance to the person, like the view, you start to see like visual contact, and then inside you this is. So first, beneficial and hurting view. So here the pleasure of seeing a situation, and it includes all its elements, the space and time relationship, its transformation, and the pain. The hurting view is the pain of seeing a situation. Same here, it can be any element of it. And the example is a person that is handsome, pretty, that's here. The poesy, artistic performance, beauty, adornment, ugliness, lack of refinement, anything that is related to the view and that generates a feeling immediately. I like this view, I don't like this view. That's what I call the beneficial and hurting view. The material, like the physical cause, is the light reception in the eyes. However, we observe some variability by people and across time, and the response of a given person is complicated to predict. Whether you will find a person beautiful or not is depends on people. And to quantify that pain, it's hard to assess. We can compare relatively for a single person, but you can say this person is more beautiful than another, but you can't generalize it. So it's this pain and this pleasure and pain are hard to deal with if you want to do it rationally. Same for this one, the sound, anything related to the sound, beneficial and hurting sound. So pleasure of hearing a situation, it includes its elements, space and time relationship, its transformations, and the pain is the opposite, radical opposite. Pain of hearing a situation. Here you have music, singing, loud voices at night, houseworks, machinery noises, and so on. The physical cause is the sound waves that are received in the air. For humans, it's between 20 and 20 kilohertz frequency, but for some animals it may be different. And here again we observe variability by people and across time. People like different music and so on, and the response is complicated to predict. So these causes we will try to find an explanation to it, but it's definitely not in the apparent section. And the quantity is the same again, is very hard to assess, depends. We can only do relative comparison for a single person. Same here, beneficial and hurting smell, anything related to the smell, example flower, perfume, sweet gas, fire, smoke. I put here the various smells, attempt at categorizing the different smells, but the reality is way more complicated than these few categories. So you have smells related to flowers, to some element, water, some fruits, some wood, so on. But the reality is way more complex, and the cause is contact of aromatic molecules with no sensors. And here again, observe variability by people and across time. Hard to assess the taste of perfume of a person. Will he like, when you buy a gift of perfume, will the person like the smell? You don't know at first. And the same here, quantity hard to assess. Maybe here to give an example, fire, smoke, for example. Here, when you are or gas, when you are at home and you smell gas, I don't consider it here a pain, because the moment you smell the gas, you're absolutely not gonna pay attention to the pain itself. You're gonna go straight to try to find where does the gas come from, to try and prevent the leak, prevent the explosion. So it's there is a feeling, but it's like it's not even considered. It's completely ignored here, because there is bigger risk behind it. Next is the last of the direct senses is the taste. Same here, but associated with eating some food. Pain of eating some food, any tasty meal, the experience of sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami flavors. So here, food contact with mouth sensors, it's basically similar sensors as the nose. And here again, observed variability by people and across time. Response is complicated to predict, how to assess as well. Only at single person can you do a qualitative comparison. That's for the tastes, and then comes a bit more complicated things. Here, sexuality is what I call any direct feeling towards another person that is dependent on the gender of that person, and basically it will cover all the senses, and it has to be associated with another person. Seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, sexual intercourse, of course. And the cause, why are we attracted to some person and not another, for now is completely unknown. Observed variability across nations and time. It's hard to, the quantities, how attracted you are to a person is hard to assess, but just as a note, in religion it's one of these This pleasure is selected as one of the two prevailing risks for mankind by the Prophet in the Sahih Bukhari 6474. Then comes the injury. Here I separate injury. There is injury and disease. Injury is pain from body injuries such as cut, stressed body tissue, any internal or external cut, inflammation, hematoma. However, any pain from an infected virus, bacteria, fungi, plants or animals is excluded, is considered a disease, and the distinction will be very important later. Or misfunctioning body cells as well is also a disease. It's not considered injury. So here it's the force that leads to the cut. An injury is all about when you get, it's one time hurt, and it's all about the recovery. However, a disease, it's you need to deal with the pathogen, so that's the difference I make. And the pain is hard also to assess. However, you can have an approximation here. If you have a similar stress, similar force, if you got cut, you cut the same way, you may reproduce the same pain. So similar stress, similar wound size, similar depth, very important, and location in the body, since the sensors depend on the body parts. All this may be used as a first approximation for relative assessment of pain. Then comes disease. So as mentioned, is sensations arising from a disease and all its side effects. So here it's really pain from anything related to life, virus, bacteria, fungi, plants, animals, or misfunctioning body cells. Anything that is related to an accident or temporary thing is considered injury, so it's not here. And the cause here is the pathogen or the misfunctioning body cells. Pain, pleasure is hard to assess as well. You may be able to reproduce the pain by having the same pathogen, but this does not guarantee. Sorry, the same pathogen does not guarantee the same disease, the same effects on people, as people are have different resistance. So you can't use here you can't use the direct reproduction of the pain as a measure of quantification. Then comes hunger. So here, pain from lack of food. So it's the feeling that happens after an extended period of time. It usually happens in travel, fasting, in case of poverty, or in case of unavailability of food. Here, sweet addiction is excluded. It's considered a disease, misfunctioning body cells that requires too much sweet following bad habits. So here, cause lack of food. It's hard to assess. The true pain felt is hard to assess as well, but like an approximation can be done by duration of time without food. If you reproduce like 3 days without food, will approximately hurt as much as 3 days without food for any given person. For one person, but yes. And then comes thirst, just associated with lack of water, even more a bit more dangerous than the previous one. So it's a feeling after extended period of time without water, such as travel, fasting, poverty, unavailability, and so on. So lack of water, and same here, approximation by duration of time without water. Then comes specific food, which is whether not just food, but a specific ingestion in the body, which is artificial intoxication. Here it's separated, so it's any excitation, happiness, lightheartedness derived from intoxicants, so alcohol, drugs, anything that makes you, that it changes the behavior of your bodies in order to generate artificial feelings. Alcohol, cannabis, cocaine. The cause is here is direct intoxicant ingestion. So it's, if for any pain or pleasure, if it's related to ingestion of an intoxicant, is categorized as this pleasure, and not any other category. So it's a split that is quite easy to understand, as the application is straightforward. The pain and pleasure is hard to assess. You may be able to approximate with the same quantity of active molecule, and I think I have the last one is fatigue. So here, pain from lack of sleep, so what you feel basically late at night. It's any lack of sleep with taking 8 hours per day as a reference. The pain pleasure is hard to assess, but you can approximate it with various measures, typically the time spent without sleep or the average daily sleep duration. So it's basically how much hours you. We can also choose how much hours you are missing compared to the 8 hours in the last day, last week, last month. That's for fatigue, and with this we have covered the sensation. It's quite the straightforward ones, but things will get a bit more complicated later as we go through it. The good thing about this is very easy to identify all of them, and it won't be the case for the others. With that said, we'll go over the emotion in the next video. Wassalamu alaikum.